Hello YouTube and welcome to the PTG Rail British signalling tutorial. After uploading the German signalling tutorial, a number of subscribers asked me if I could make one based in the UK. British signalling systems differ considerably from the German signalling systems and are in many ways easier to understand. That being said, there is a lot more complexity to the British signalling system than first meets the eye, and many people seem unsure how to approach different signals. This guide should help you to understand how British signalling works and the principles upon which the system is based. First, we're going to take a look at the different trackside signs you may see and what they represent. After this, we will then take a look at the various signals, including the main signal aspects you would normally encounter, as well as the older semaphore signals. Next, we will take a look inside the cab of a train to discuss the safety systems which are simulated. Unfortunately, due to inconsistency in Train Simulator DLC, not all systems are simulated correctly, if at all, and the level of implementation varies from train to train. One such example of this is the TPWS system, which can be found on routes such as Edinburgh to Glasgow or West Coast Main Line Trent Valley. However, it is not simulated correctly. The Advanced Train Protection System of the Great Western Main Line is yet to feature in Train Simulator, and the driver safety device is simulated on about half the trains which have it in real life. After this, we will take a look at several different driving scenarios from the cab and how to respond to the signal and safety systems, before taking a look at the radio electronic token block system on the West Highland Line Extension. This tutorial won't be perfect, and some information may not be included to help reduce the overall length of the video, as it's not relevant to driving within Train Simulator, but I do aim to make this as comprehensive as possible. Let's now take a look at the trackside signs. Speed boards are circular signs with a red border and a number in the middle, which indicates the speed limit in miles per hour. In Britain, train speeds are always measured in miles per hour, apart from on the high-speed 1 route out of London St Pancras International. It is important to note that when you pass a speed board with an increase in the speed limit, you must wait until the rear of the train has passed the board before you accelerate. Dual speed boards indicate differential speeds for freight and passenger trains. The top number on the board is always the lower value, and this applies to freight trains. The higher value of the two numbers is at the bottom, and this applies to passenger trains. Directional speed boards are speed boards with an arrow below them and are used for diverging routes. The direction of the arrow indicates that the speed limit applies only to the diverging route in that direction. If you see a directional speed board with a left arrow on it, this indicates that the speed limit applies only to trains turning to the left at this junction, with the opposite applying to speed boards with a right arrow on them. It is also possible to have an arrow pointing each way on a speed board, indicating that the speed limit applies to diverging routes in either direction. On some routes, you may see speed boards which have an HST or MU indication. This indicates that HSTs or multiple units respectively may travel at an enhanced permitted speed on that section of track, due to having better braking capabilities than other trains which may pass along there. Older style speed posts are harder to see, and they are indicated by two numbers in bright yellow with no background behind them. On the West Coast Main Line, you will find orange EPS speed boards. EPS stands for Enhanced Permissible Speed and applies to tilting trains only. Non-tilting trains must still travel at the standard speed limit. Level crossing speed limit boards, such as found here on the Freeware Exeter to Barnstaple route, indicate a speed limit is in force for a level crossing ahead. Although the line speed is higher, you must travel at this lower speed until you are clear of the crossing. A triangular board pointing downwards with a yellow border is known as a Morpeth board. They get their name from a rather infamous sharp curve at Morpeth on the East Coast Main Line, which you can see here. Due to the large drop in speed limits here, there have been a number of derailments due to excessive speed. As a result, this board was brought in as an advanced speed limit warning. Not all speed changes have Morpeth board warnings, and most but not all Morpeth boards have a permanent cautionary AWS magnet just before them. A circular board with a grey border and a W in the middle is a whistle board. This indicates that you should sound the horn, though sounding the horn is not permitted between 11 PM and 7 AM, except in an emergency. Neutral sections are gaps in the electrical supply on overhead electric routes. There are two different signs which indicate a neutral section. The first is a warning sign, usually placed around a mile from the section, and the second is placed at the start of the section itself. Neutral sections are also marked by trackside magnets, which will temporarily cut off the power. You should always power down for a moment when travelling through one. Full neutral section functionality is found on certain trains on both the West Coast Main Line Trent Valley and West Coast Main Line over Shap routes. At certain major stations where the speed limit is below 20 miles per hour, you may see a no AWS sign, such as you can see here at Edinburgh Waverley Station. This indicates that the signals ahead are not guarded by AWS magnets, so pay extra attention when approaching the signals. Now that we've looked at the main trackside signs, let's take a closer look at the signals themselves. There are 3 or 4 main signal aspects that you will see depending on the route: red, single yellow, double yellow, and green. You may well be asking yourself what these different signal aspects all mean. To discuss and demonstrate this, we first need to take a look into the principles which underpin railway signalling, before showing you how you as the driver need to react to the various signal aspects. Routes are divided into sections known as blocks. These block sections are divided by signals, one at the entrance to the block and the other at the exit to the block. You can see here at London Bridge just how close those blocks can be. The distance between signals is one factor in deciding the maximum speed limit of a particular route. Railway signalling is operated on the principle that only one train should occupy a block section at any one time. If a train is occupying a block section, as you can see here, the signal immediately behind the train will display a red aspect, indicating that the section is occupied and trains must stop. The only time a train is allowed to pass a signal at danger is with the explicit permission of the signalman. Here you can see a train occupying a block section, causing the signal guarding that section to display a red aspect. But what's happening further back along the line? The block section behind the train is empty, and so the signal guarding that section is displaying a single yellow aspect. This indicates to the driver of any approaching train as they enter this section that only this section is clear, the next signal is red, and they must prepare to stop at that signal which is guarding the next block section. Some routes operate with just 3 aspect signalling, meaning that you only get a red for stop, yellow for caution, and green for clear. However, most British main lines operate what is known as 4 aspect signalling. 4 aspect signalling adds an extra cautionary signal, which is the double yellow aspect. This allows for better spacing between trains, and also allows for extra braking distance for trains travelling at higher speeds. The double yellow aspect means that the next 2 block sections ahead of the train are clear. The signal 2 block sections ahead is displaying a red aspect, with the signal 1 block section ahead displaying a yellow aspect, so drive with caution and prepare to stop. A green aspect means the line is clear. Proceed at the current speed limit. Under green signals, you can be sure that at least the next 2 sections are clear under 3 aspect signalling, and the next 3 sections are clear under 4 aspect signalling. Now that we've had a look at the principles of how signals work within Train Simulator, let's take a look at the signals from another perspective, this time using a piece of PC signalling simulation software called SimSig. This should help to aid our understanding on the principles of signalling and how the signalling system works. So here we are in SimSig London Liverpool Street, which just simulates the approaches to the station itself. So on the left hand side here you can see Liverpool Street Station with 18 platforms, and you can see a train occupying the block there in platform 4. Indeed, you can see that there are two codes there. One represents the code of the train that's just arrived, with the other code representing the code of the next train to depart from platform 4 at London Liverpool Street. With train head codes, the first number indicates the priority or type of the train. The letter just after that indicates the destination of the train, and the final two numbers indicate the service number of the train. Now, as you look across this map, you can notice lots of red dots and also some green dots and some yellow dots. So I'm just going to press pause for a moment so you can see what's happening here. These dots represent the signals. So here you can see the first line into London Liverpool Street from Stratford, and you can see a series of signals here. We're not going to worry about what the letters mean next to the signals because that's more detail than we need to go into for this tutorial. But here you can see that there is a block section where the train is not cleared through because the white line is not illuminated and you need to set this route manually. As a result, you can see that the signal just there, just before that block section, is displaying a red aspect. If we now go to the next section along, you can see that the signal there is displaying a single yellow aspect, indicating to train 5P02, which is arriving when he gets there, that the next signal is red. And here we have the double yellow aspect, indicating that the signal 2 block sections ahead is displaying the red, with the next signal displaying a single yellow. Finally, we have the green aspect here, which, as you can see, means that at least the next 3 block sections are clear. So if we now unpause this simulation, and I now clear to the next signal, watch what happens to the previous signals. So first of all, you can see that train 5P02 is coming in, and also watch the signal there as he passes it. You'll notice that the signal jumps to red, so that any trains coming up will then know that they can't proceed into that next block section. So as you can see, the next signal section has now been cleared, and as the train reaches the green signal, the next section is clearing as well. And so gradually the train will be cleared into London Liverpool Street. As you can see, that there's basically no platforms other than platform 4 occupied, so there'll be no problem for this train coming in. Now you can now see the red signal here which the train passed on entry into the Liverpool Street area, which is about to jump up to a single yellow aspect because train 5P02 has cleared. You'll also notice that it didn't clear to single yellow as soon as the train was clear of this signal here, and that's because there is what's known as a predefined overlap of usually 200 yards, by which the train must have passed the signal before the previous signal can then change colour. So if I now clear that there, you'll see it will change to single yellow straight away. But if the train had still been in this overlap section here, then you wouldn't have been able to clear that signal into the next section. So I hope that you followed that pretty well. We're now going to take a look at the safety systems which are involved when driving under British signalling systems back within Train Simulator itself. Signals on most routes have an AWS ramp guarding them, one of which you can see here. AWS stands for Automatic Warning System, and it is a way to warn drivers of the upcoming signal aspect. As a train passes over the magnet, if the signal is green, then the driver will hear an audible bell or chime sound, and the driver does not need to respond to this. If the signal is showing anything other than a green aspect, the driver will hear a buzzer sound, which they then need to cancel within a few seconds, or the emergency brakes will be applied automatically. Once the driver has cancelled this alarm, they then need to react according to the signal aspect, which we'll look into more in a few minutes. Note that the AWS system does not differentiate between yellow and red signals. The alarm sound is the same whatever cautionary aspect the signal is displaying. It can only tell you if the signal is displaying a clear green aspect or not. TPWS stands for Train Protection and Warning System and has been implemented to some extent on several routes within Train Simulator. I won't go into full detail about how the system works as it's not fully functional within the game. Here you can see a TPWS grid in front of a signal. If this signal is displaying a red aspect, then the TPWS loop will be armed, and if you are travelling above 20 miles per hour as you pass over this grid, then the emergency brakes will be applied on any TPWS fitted train. As a result, on routes with active TPWS, you must drive with extra caution, ensuring that you approach red signals at a slower speed than perhaps you would do normally. Routes with TPWS active include the Glasgow Airport Rail Link, Edinburgh to Glasgow, East Coast Main Line South and West Coast Main Line Trent Valley. Now that we have looked at the main principles of signalling, which will be demonstrated further in some driving tutorials in a few minutes, we need to take a look at another type of signal aspect which you will encounter, known as diverging route aspects. Diverging route aspects are used where you need to turn off the route you are currently travelling along onto a diverging route. It warns the driver that they will be taking a diverging route, and so they need to adjust their speed accordingly. Here we are at Stoats Nest Junction on the Brighton Main Line. Trains can be routed to diverge from the first line onto the slow line at this junction. The speed limit over the junction is 70 miles per hour, whereas if you were to continue straight down the first line, the speed limit would be 90 miles per hour. As a train heads south towards the junction, the first indication that the driver gets of the divergence onto the slow line is a flashing double yellow signal. This indicates that the next signal will be displaying a flashing single yellow aspect, and the signal 2 block sections ahead will be displaying a solid single yellow aspect, as well as an indication of the diverging route. As we head towards the junction, we now encounter the flashing single yellow signal. This indicates that the diverging junction is after the next signal, and the next signal will be displaying a single yellow aspect. At this point, I would usually brake to around 60 miles per hour, as even though the junction speed is 70 miles per hour, solid single yellow aspects must always be treated with caution. Now approaching the junction, you can see that we have a solid single yellow aspect with a feather indicator. Feather indicators are used on signals to indicate when you are taking a diverging route. At this point, you need to ensure that you are below the speed limit for the junction. And beyond that, even though the next signal is almost certain to be a green aspect, as it usually is after crossing a junction with approach-controlled signalling, you must continue to slow down, as if it is displaying a red aspect, until you can see otherwise, because as a relentless rule on the railway, if you pass a solid single yellow signal, you must always drive as if the next signal is red. Semaphore signals are the precursor to modern colour light signals. An arm mounted on the post gives an indication of the signal aspect to the driver. For most signals, when the arm is pointing up in a diagonal direction, this means that the signal is showing a clear indication. This is known as an upper quadrant signal. On routes such as the Falmouth branch in the western region, the semaphore arm points downwards instead of upwards to give a clear indication. This is known as lower quadrant signalling and is far less common. This tutorial will focus on upper quadrant signals. One thing which both upper and lower quadrant signals both have in common is that when the arm is at a horizontal angle like you can see here, this is giving a cautionary or stop aspect. You can also see that there is a light on the signal post, indicating which colour the signal is displaying. Home signals are main signals. They are coloured red as you can see here. They have two colours or aspects that they can display depending on the position of the signal, red and green. If the signal arm is in a horizontal position, this represents a red or stop aspect. You must stop at a home signal in this position. If it is in the upper diagonal position, this represents a green aspect, so the line is clear and you may proceed. Yellow distance signals have a different look to them than home signals. Distance signals are warning signals capable of displaying two colours in the two signal positions, yellow or green. There is no red aspect on a distance signal, as it is merely a warning signal. When the arm is in the horizontal position, this represents a yellow or cautionary aspect. You must drive assuming that the home signal is at danger until you can see otherwise. If the distance signal is pointing in the upper diagonal direction, this means that the line is clear and the next home signal is clear too, so you may proceed at line speed. Please note that it is entirely possible for a distance signal to be protecting more than one home signal. It is quite common to get 2 or more home signals after a distance signal. What this means is that if the distance signal is showing a cautionary aspect, any of the home signals up until the next section may be at danger, and it may not be the first home signal that you encounter. You must drive with caution, assuming that all of the home signals ahead are at danger until you can see otherwise. Semaphore signals also differentiate whether or not you are going to be taking a diverging route. Here you can see 2 semaphore signals next to each other. The main signal indicates that you are cleared to continue along the main route, with the other signal at a slightly lower position, indicating clearance for a diverging route. On some routes, such as Liverpool to Manchester, which uses modern colour light signalling, 2-aspect signalling may be used. This operates on the same principles as semaphore signalling, with both distant and home signals. A 2-aspect distance signal can only display a yellow or green aspect, with a 2-aspect home signal only being able to display a red or green aspect. Much like main signals, ground or shunt signals also have 2 types, an older semaphore type and a modern colour light type. These are used for shunt moves and are most commonly found in yards, though you may find shunt signals in other places, such as here, just past Ribblehead Station on the Settle to Carlisle line, guarding the single-track viaduct just ahead. Older style semaphore shunt signals are a circular disc, white in colour with a red line on them. When the line is horizontal, that is a danger or stop indication, and when the line is in a diagonal direction, that is a clear or proceed indication. With modern colour light shunt signals, you will see 2 red lights in a horizontal direction indicating the danger or stop aspect, with 2 white lights in a diagonal direction indicating a clear or proceed aspect. When approaching a station and heading towards an occupied platform, it is possible to be given a call-on signal aspect. This tells the driver that they are cleared into the platform ahead, but that the platform is occupied. This is particularly useful when 2 units need to join together in the same platform. In some areas, signalling visibility can be very poor, and as a result, repeaters are placed to give a driver advanced warning of the signal aspect ahead. Repeaters have 2 positions, with the line in the middle either at a horizontal or diagonal position. The horizontal position means that the signal ahead is at danger, with the diagonal position meaning that the signal ahead is clear. Please note that the repeater cannot distinguish between yellow and green signals. It only tells you if the signal ahead is at danger or not. On certain routes, there is the addition of a green repeater, which indicates that the signal ahead is displaying a green aspect, but these are not widely used, and I'm not sure if we have any of them within Train Simulator. In some locations, you will see theatre-style route or platform indicators. Here at Brighton, you can see that when the route is cleared onto the main line, the signal has an M above it, indicating clearance to the main line. Approaching London Victoria, you will see that a number illuminates on the signal once we are cleared into Victoria Station, and this number indicates the platform number that we are cleared into. Now that we have had a look at the various signal aspects you will see within Train Simulator, let's take a look at some in-cab driving scenarios on various routes and trains to demonstrate what these signals mean and how to respond to them. In this first driving scenario, I'm going to demonstrate coming to a stop at a red signal from high speed, We're currently heading south along the East Coast Main Line South add-on towards London King's Cross, and as you can see we're currently travelling at around 120 miles per hour. The train is currently in full power as we're running under green signals, and the speed limit here is 125 miles per hour, so I'm accelerating towards that. However, shortly after passing through Stevenage station, which is coming up in a moment, there is actually a blockage on this line just south of Nebworth, with a Class 365 blocking the route. As a result, we will get a red signal. What I'd like to demonstrate here is actively looking at the signals ahead, because if you just rely on the AWS to warn you of an adverse signal, the chances are that you will end up passing a signal at danger, which is something which is termed SPAD, which stands for Signal Passed at Danger, and is something you absolutely want to try and avoid when driving trains. You can now see Stevenage station coming up just ahead, and we're going to be passing through the station at around 122 to 123 miles per hour. And so as I'm driving along, you can see we're currently passing green signals, and you can also hear the bing from the AWS system indicating that the signals are clear and I don't actually have to respond to that or do anything. But what I'm actually looking for as we're driving along is I'm trying to see the signal aspects ahead of the train. You can see that that one was green before we got to the AWS ramp. And as we continue along, I'm going to keep an eye on the signals. And this is what you should do all the time, not just if you know that you're going to get an adverse signal. Now I can see ahead there is a yellow signal, which is a double yellow aspect for our track. So I immediately idled the power and started applying the brakes, and I've made a fairly hard brake application because, as mentioned earlier, I can be certain that at this point the signal 2 block sections ahead is displaying a red aspect. I'm also aware that if we pass a single yellow signal at faster than around 75 miles per hour, there's a good chance that we won't be able to stop at the red signal coming up ahead. So we're now coming up on the single yellow signal, and we're passing it at, well, almost bang on 75. I think we probably passed it at 76 miles per hour. And as you can see, I'm just continuing to slow down, and I'm keeping an eye on the track ahead, looking out for the red signal. One thing to bear in mind is that as this is the East Coast Main Line South route, TPWS is active, and I need to be careful to ensure that I don't approach a red signal at faster than around 20 miles per hour. You can now see the red signal aspect coming up just ahead, so I'm leaving the brakes in this position, which seems to be bringing our speed down quite nicely. As you can see, I went up to 4 on the brake gauge there. As it happens, it looks like this signal isn't actually armed with a TPWS loop, but I was doing below 20 miles per hour there on the AWS ramp. And at this point, I'm now releasing the brakes a bit as we're going to stop slightly too early. Although the aim is ideally to not actually stop at all at a signal, but rather to try and crawl up to the signal in the hopes that it will change. In this case, I already know that it won't, but in real life you wouldn't necessarily. So I believe this is a term, or what is termed as defensive driving, where the aim is to drive slowly if necessary, in fact as slow as possible without actually stopping, in the hopes that the signal ahead will clear. Of course, I am now going at a slow enough speed that in a moment we will be able to stop at this red signal without any difficulty. I'm now just going to use some light braking to bring our speed down and stop just before the signal. And so that was a demonstration of coming to a stop at a red signal from a high speed of almost 125 miles per hour, and I hope you followed that okay. We're now going to take a look at the second driving tutorial, which will take place on the West Coast Main Line over Shap route. Here we are at Preston Station on the West Coast Main Line with a Class 390 Pendolino on a northbound service. In this scenario, instead of demonstrating approaching a signal from a speed, I'm going to demonstrate what's known as chasing the yellows. Now that we're in the cab of the Class 390, we're cleared to depart from Preston. Indeed, you can see that there is a green signal ahead of us just here. And the speed limit is currently 35 miles per hour, so I'm going to accelerate up towards that now, and then I'm just going to cut the power back as we get towards 35 and apply the cruise control. Of course, none of this at present relates to the signals, but you'll see how it all relates in a minute. Because what I've done is I've imagined that this is a delayed service, and as a result a slower service has been put out on the track ahead of this train, which is going to give us adverse signals. Indeed, you can already see just ahead of us that there is a double yellow aspect there, which in fact just jumped up to green. Now that we've approached 35 miles per hour, I've applied the cruise control and we're currently in step 2 of power. Just here the speed limit is going up to 80 miles per hour. As we're under a green signal, I am going to accelerate towards that. Indeed, we can accelerate as we have reached the overbridge, which is coming up just ahead. And so I'm now going to start accelerating towards 80 miles per hour. But of course, like I said in the last scenario, what you need to do is actively look at the signal aspects ahead. So you can now see there that we have a double yellow aspect. As a result of that, we've just been given an AWS warning. And instead of accelerating further up towards the speed limit, I've now applied cruise control at 50 miles per hour to hold us there. And the reason for this is that I'd like to A, drive with caution so that I can be sure that we could stop at any potential red signal coming up ahead. And beyond that, B, the whole idea is to try and not stop if I can help it. The idea is to drive at a slow enough speed that I shouldn't have to stop at a red signal. So you can now see the next signal is just coming up, and it appears that it is indeed a single yellow aspect, unless that jumps up to a double yellow before I pass it, which it hasn't done. I now have to drive assuming that the next signal is displaying a red aspect until I can see otherwise. So I've just cut back the power now, and I'm applying some light braking to bring our speed down again. And I'm looking out for the signal aspect ahead. In fact, I'm just going to zoom in there. I wouldn't normally do this when driving, but I feel it's a good way to demonstrate what's happening for this particular video. You can see that the signal has cleared to a single yellow. You probably also noticed in the distance you can actually see the train, which is slowing us down. However, because this signal is displaying a single yellow aspect, I'm now just going to give us a little bit of power to bring our speed up slightly, probably to around 40 to 45 miles per hour, and then apply the cruise control once again. And so I'm now applying cruise control at 45 miles per hour, which is a good speed to be passing a single yellow at, and is certainly a slow enough speed that if we see a red signal ahead, we will be able to stop in time without any issues at all. I'm now cutting the power back to idle once again because I'm not sure what aspect the next signal is displaying, and I want to try and see if I can see that first. In fact, it was displaying a red aspect by the looks of it. You probably couldn't see it very well from your screen there, but the signal was initially displaying a red aspect when I first saw it, and is now displaying a single yellow aspect. So once again, I'm going to hold us at around 45 miles per hour to see what happens. If this signal was to now jump up to a double yellow aspect, I would increase our speed slightly, probably to closer to around 60 miles per hour. Rather than 45, and certainly no more than 70 when travelling under double yellow signals. As we've now passed another single yellow, once again the next signal at that point is displaying a red aspect, so I now have to assume that it is red until I can see otherwise. So I'm going to prepare to brake in a moment for a red signal unless that signal has jumped up. Now going to use the zoom feature again, and as you can see already the signal is displaying a yellow aspect, so I'm just at this point going to continue cruising at around 45 miles per hour, as it seems that at this speed I won't actually need to slow down to stop at a red signal. And as mentioned, if the signal then jumps up to a double yellow, I will increase my speed a bit more, because it's obvious then that the train ahead is getting slightly further away, which means it's going faster than me, and as a result I'm able to travel at a slightly faster speed. You certainly must drive with extra caution when chasing the yellows. As you can probably see there, the signal ahead has now just jumped up to a double yellow aspect. So now I'm going to apply a little bit of power, as I mentioned, to bring our speed up towards 60 to 70 miles per hour. And so we're accelerating nicely towards that now. I'm probably going to settle on 70, as that seems like a good speed. Certainly if we encounter another single yellow signal, then what I would do is I would slow back down to 45 to 50 miles per hour to ensure that we have braking room to stop at any red signals ahead. And so I've now applied cruise control at just below 70 miles per hour, which is a good speed to be cruising along. As you can see, the signal ahead is now displaying a double yellow aspect, so we're now chasing the double yellows, which allows for a bit more room when driving, a bit more speed. And so I think that's a pretty good demonstration, really, of how to drive under yellow signals when you're chasing the yellows. So you need to drive slower, you need to drive with more caution. And the whole idea is to aim to not encounter a red signal if possible, and to drive at a speed slow enough that you chase the yellows rather than reach the reds. Now that we've had a look at this driving scenario, we're going to take a look at the next driving scenario, which will be taking place on the Brighton Main Line. Here we are in the cab of a Class 377 heading southwards on the Brighton Main Line, having just passed through South Croydon Station. The speed limit here is now going up to 90 miles per hour, so I'm going to accelerate towards that. And in this scenario, what we're going to take a look at is diverging route aspects. I've often mistakenly called this approach controlled signalling, but that's not actually the correct name. This is the scenario which I demonstrated the signals of a bit earlier on in the tutorial, so I just thought it would be fitting to demonstrate this from the cab of the train and not just from the outside of the train. So I'm now accelerating towards the 90 mile per hour speed limit, and we will shortly be passing through Purley Oak Station. I will be crossing onto the slow line at Stoats Nest Junction, and so I have to keep an eye out for the diverging aspects, starting with the flashing double yellow, and then demonstrate how you would respond to this. Actual approach controlled signalling is where the signalling system will slow you down for a red signal, and then at the last moment as you're approaching the red signal, the signal will then jump up and indicate which direction you're going to travel at. I'm sure it is implemented in Train Simulator, but I'm not sure which routes it's implemented on, so I won't be demonstrating it in this tutorial video. So as you can see, we've just passed the flashing double yellow signal. At this point I don't actually need to do anything, but I have just idled the power to allow the train to coast, and in a moment we're going to reach the flashing single yellow aspect, which will be coming up just after the platform here at Purley Station. At this point I'm now going to treat that as if it's a double yellow, as although I know the speed limit across the junction is 70 miles per hour, as mentioned earlier it's going to be a solid single yellow aspect just before the junction, so I must treat the next signal as red until I can see otherwise. So you can now see the solid single yellow aspect coming up with the feather indicator indicating that we are turning to the left on Stoats Nest Junction. But I've allowed the train to slow down towards 50 miles per hour. At this point I'm just going to release the brakes for a moment and allow the train to coast, and then shortly after the junction I'm going to brake further until I can see the next signal, as I'm not sure exactly where the next signal is. And although I'm almost certain it's displaying a green aspect, in fact, well, I am certain, in real life you could never be certain on that, and so I want to drive as realistically as possible. So I've now brought our speed down further, and we're doing around 35 miles per hour. And I'm still looking out for the signal just ahead. And you can now see that the signal ahead is displaying a green aspect. So at this point, we would then just apply full power and accelerate up to line speed as normal. Now that we've had a look at how to approach diverging route aspects, we're going to take a look at the radio electronic token block system on the West Highland Line Extension add-on. So what I'm going to do first is give an introduction and overview of the system, and then I'm going to focus quickly on the trackside signs involved. There aren't too many. And then after that we're going to jump into the cab of a Class 37 to demonstrate how to operate that signalling system. Now that we have looked at the main signalling system in Britain, it's time to take a look at a more specialised signalling system, known as radio electronic token block. This system is still based on the basic principles of signalling, but it is a very different system to drive under, with unique operating rules, and it removes the need for trackside signals. There is a version of the radio electronic token block system on the West Highland Line Extension add-on on the route from Fort William to Mallaig in Scotland. Other than in a small area around Fort William, there are no signals to be found on the whole route. Radio electronic token block is a cheap way to monitor a long single line route from just one location, and it works by radio communication and data telegrams, which are sent to and from the train by the signalling centre controlling the line. Radio electronic token block can also be found on the route from Inverness to Kyle of Lochalsh in real life, but unfortunately it has not been implemented by Just Trains on the Kyle line route which we have in Train Simulator. Firstly, we will take a look at the different trackside signs which are a part of this system, learn what they mean, and then after that we will get into the cab of a Class 37 to demonstrate how you operate the radio electronic token block system, which is the best way to understand how it works. The Class 37, which comes with the West Highland Line Extension, is the only train in Train Simulator which can utilise the radio electronic token block system, although certain Class 156 and 158 units have been fitted to use it in real life. Directional stop boards are placed along the route and they take the place of conventional signals. You must stop at each board unless you have permission to pass, to contact the signalling centre and request permission to proceed into the next section, unless you have already been given that permission. You will see a blue lamp below each board, with a flashing blue light indicating a clear signal, and a solid blue light indicating a red or stop signal. This allows you to drive the route in Train Simulator in trains which are not equipped with radio electronic token block. Fixed distance signal boards are used extensively on this route. While not unique to the radio electronic token block system, they are a very important part of it. A fixed distance signal board means that you should always treat the next signal as displaying a red or danger aspect. On conventional routes, this would mean driving with caution and preparing to stop at a red signal. On the radio electronic token block system, fixed distance signal boards warn you that you are approaching a directional stop board. You must prepare to stop at the next directional stop board. The station limits board is used to notify the driver that they need to contact the signalling centre after passing it, to let the signalling centre know that the train has cleared the section. These boards appear shortly after directional stop boards, where you have received a token. Radio electronic token block frequency boards indicate locations where you need to change the radio frequency. After passing one, all you will hear on the radio is static, so you will need to use the radio tuning button in the cab to change the radio frequency so that you are able to remain in contact with the signalling centre. There are two signs which indicate the start and end of radio electronic token block signalling, which you can see here. The commencement sign placed at the start of radio electronic token block working, and the end sign at the end of radio electronic token block working, where we switch back to normal signalling. Now that we've looked at the pertinent signs to radio electronic token block operation, let's get into the cab of a Class 37 to demonstrate how it works and how to operate the system. Here we are in the cab of a Class 37 at Fort William Station. With the radio electronic token block system, there are actually advice messages which tell us how to use it, but in my typical style I've turned them off because I don't like advice messages or anything in Train Simulator telling me what to do. So to get permission to be cleared on the signalling system, the first thing that we need to do here is, you can see there the make call button on the radio, and now need to press that button.
2278 signaler Bumblebee, over.
2278 signaler Bumblebee, state your message, over.
2278 request to enter the system, over.
2278 press receive to accept test token, over.
At this point I now need to accept a test token to make sure that the system is working. So the lady on the signalling system there just told me to press receive, which I'm going to do now.
2278 now have test token on display, over.
2278 press send to enter system, over.
So you can now see that we've got red text there indicating that we've received the test token. The next thing I now need to do is press the send button to confirm that the system is working okay.
2278 training system, over.
2278 understood.
So now we know that the system is working and we've received the test token. You can see that we now have no token there, which means that we don't have permission to proceed any further. What I now need to do is press the make call button, and then the lady on the radio will tell me whether or not the line is clear ahead, and whether or not I can receive a token or I have to wait.
2278 signaler Bumblebee, over.
2278 signaler Bumblebee, state your message, over.
2278 requesting token to proceed, over.
2278 section ahead is blocked, hold your position, over.
2278 understand I do not have permission to proceed, holding position, over.
So as you just heard there, I was just advised that we do not have permission to proceed because the line ahead is blocked. Indeed, there's a train just departing to our right hand side, which is going to depart slightly ahead of us. As a result, we have to wait here now until the lady on the radio contacts us again to tell us that we have permission to proceed. Now, under normal circumstances throughout most of the route, that won't happen, and you'll just be given permission straight away. Once we've been given clearance to proceed, we then need to press the receive button on the radio to accept the token. The lady will also tell us how far we're cleared along the line, and you'll see up here that a token will appear with the name, which will actually tell us how far we are cleared to proceed. So now we just need to wait for the train to our right to depart, and in a moment the lady will contact us and we will be able to proceed further with receiving the token for clearance onto the West Highland Line Extension towards Malig. I would just like to say at this point, while we're waiting for her to contact us, that this is a route which I have not yet covered in a route learning video, but I do intend on covering this route in a route learning video in the future. So please do look out for that. It's taken me a little while to get round to it, but now I've covered something on the West Highland Line South, which is the brand new add-on, which I plan on covering a bit more on in the near future. I feel it's about time to cover a route learning video on this route, so I'm hoping to get that up within the next month or so. One of the problems with this route is that with the low speed limits and the short distance, it actually takes an awful long time to drive the route, up to 2 hours to drive from end to end, even though the route is only around 40 miles.
2278, this is signaler Bumblebee. Are you receiving? Over.
2278 signaler Bumblebee. State your message, over.
2278 section ahead is now clear. Press receive to accept token, over.
So as you just heard there, we've now been contacted by the signalling centre and we've been told that the section ahead is now clear. So I now need to press receive to accept the test token.
2278 for token to blocking allowed for timed section token on display, over.
2278 for token blocking allowed for timed section token confirmed. You have permission to depart Fort William and proceed to the DSB and block allowed for timed. over.
2278, understand I have permission to depart Fort William and proceed to the DSB at Loch Ely forward-bound. Out.
So as you can see, we've now been cleared to Loch Eel, so we've got the section token between Fort William and Loch Eel. What that means is that once we reach Loch Eel, what we would need to do is then contact the signalling centre again to request permission to proceed further. So I'm just going to drive out of Fort William now, just beyond the platform marker board. And then once we've passed the board there, and should I say it's not the platform marker, it's the station limit marker. And then once we pass that, I will need to contact the signalling centre again, just to let them know that we have cleared this area. And then after that point, I think that will pretty much be the conclusion of this signalling guide. So I'd just like to say at this point, I do hope that you've enjoyed watching this video, and I hope that you found it informative and useful, and it helps you to drive better. If you've got any questions about anything which I've discussed in this video, then please do ask me in the comments, and I will try and address them as best as possible. I do plan soon to create another much shorter signalling tutorial covering the TVM 430 system, which is found on the London to Faversham route on the high speed section. I was originally going to include it in this video, but I decided not to, in the interests of trying to keep the length down, or else we'd probably be adding another 15 or 20 minutes to this video. Also, the system itself is not a British signalling system, but a French signalling system. So as a result, I just wasn't sure if it belonged in a British signalling guide video. So please do look out for that. I will be making a tutorial on that in the future. Although most of the information that you need to drive on the TVM 430 system is already included on my London to Faversham routes learning videos. I would like to create this as a separate video just so the information is there and easy to get. Another tutorial I'm considering on making is also a driver reminder appliance tutorial, so that you know the situations where you would use it. Again, I decided not to include it in this signalling tutorial, just in the interests of trying to keep the length down a bit. So in a moment we should be reaching the station limits marker. I'm just looking out for the board for that now. I'm accelerating towards 40 miles per hour, which is the speed limits here. Still haven't quite reached it yet. I thought we might have reached it by now. It seems that the station limit board is slightly further than I originally thought. I believe it might be after the next junction, actually. I do apologise for the slight lag here. For some reason, even though this route is not particularly demanding, I do sometimes get lag in the Fort William area. Though hopefully lag will become a thing of the past once I've got the PC upgrade, which is being planned for next month. I will keep you updated on that. As you can see, we're now passing the signal which says that we're starting on the radio token working, so the conventional signals are now gone at this point, and we're now running fully on the radio token working, which indeed we will be running on all of the way to Mallaig. You can now see the board just coming up here, which is the station limit marker. At this point I now press the make call button.
2278, signal abandoned. 2278, pass the station limit marker.
2278, confirmed. You have passed the station limits marker.
And so now I've told the signalling centre that we have passed the station limits marker, and they're aware of that, so they now know that we are clear of that section. So that concludes it for this signalling tutorial. Thank you very, very much for watching this video. I really do hope that you've enjoyed it. Please don't forget that you can find me on Facebook for the latest updates, the link of which is in the description of this video. And also, if you value the work that I do and would like to sponsor me towards the cost of new equipment and future projects, then please visit my Patreon page for further information. Again, the link for that is in the description of this video. Once again, thank you for watching.